Visual tension is the opposite to what we talked about yesterday. So yesterday I talked about harmony and I talked about balance. So visual tension is imbalance and it's a visual unease and uncertainty. It could even just be mystery, so it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be continuance, so you know that that path goes through there, but because you can't see the other end of the path and where it goes, it creates a bit of visual tension and a bit of engagement. So this is a photo that kind of highlights it for you. And this shows you, this is Dutching. So what I've done is I've tilted it and I've tilted the horizon. Now one of them, the one on the left for me, yeah, it's tilted, it's Dutched and it looks a bit weird. But the one on the right for me kind of looks like it's falling over and it kind of looks a bit weird because the rocks, everything is falling out of the frame instead of the one on the left, everything's kind of falling into the frame. So for me, that that is visual tension that works on the left, and then you've got visual tension on the right that doesn't work. So it's an imbalance, but it doesn't work. Okay. So this is another example of visual tension. So this is a location in Melbourne, and it's a really popular street art area called Drury Lane. And you get hundreds of people taking photos down there every day. And I've done this so many times. I ran workshops in here, in-person workshops. I probably had 20 different workshops where I just walked up and down taking photos, getting some real cool camera to lens distortions and playing around with different focus modes and all this on people's phones and showing all the cool stuff. And one day I was looking at my camera down there and I accidentally flipped the camera, so I was actually the front. And after I got over the shock, you know what it's like, you go, oh, it's me. After I got over the shock and leaned back, I saw this photo. I saw this photo of the front camera of my phone pointing up at the building. It's like, oh, wow, look at that. And it was really cool. And then I realized because afterwards I take the group and we go and have a coffee and we go through my 6-step photo editing process, which you can find on the YouTube channel. And went through and edited and we played around with this one and we discovered that when we straighten it, is the first step of the process. When we actually turned it, it actually added more visual tension to us. By tilting it more and having a bit more of a dynamic diagonal. And if you remember earlier, I talked about diagonal and I talked about the first one, Barak diagonal, which is from the bottom left to the top right. And then this one, where you go from the bottom to the top left, is called the sinister diagonal. Sinister diagonal is one that has more visual tension because we read things from left to right and all that sort of good stuff we've already talked about. All right, so that's that one. I'm just going to dive into my course here. This is the Stronger Photo Composition 4-step system. Unique perspective. So looking for a different unique perspective can add a bit of visual tension because you can create something where it's unexpected. We talked about space earlier. We talked about positive space, negative space, and active space. Just to refresh, active space is the space ahead of a subject or a visual element that gives you the perception of movement and motion. So you've got the boat moving towards, and then on the right side there you've got the boat kind of just about to crash into a big cargo ship, or it's about to crash into something. But having that kind of, and also having it cropped right up against the edge of the frame creates a bit of that claustrophobic feeling, that kind of tension, like, oh, it's like you want to have a bit of breathing space around it. And it's interesting how we can actually have a physiological reaction to photos, and that's, for me, the boat does. It kind of makes you feel a bit cramped. So yes, that's the difference there with active space. And running out of the frame can create that visual tension. Here's an example of proportions. This squirrel getting in there, it's not really a great example of visual tension, but it's enough that it grabs your attention and goes, what's going on here? So it's not really an accurate visual tension, but proportions create a sense of whimsy, sense of and sense of humor into the photos and that sort of thing. So typically with visual tension, you think about it as a negative thing, like you're creating unease and imbalance, but visual tension can be a positive, fun thing, like you can do with proportions. What else have I got? Cropping. So doing what we call a ruthless crop, an unexpected crop, and this is where people will say, Mike, this is fantastic. You've got more than 100 compositional tools and techniques, but I don't like to follow rules. I think the rules are there, and the rules are there to be broken. And, or did I just do an eye roll then? I didn't mean to. But you can tell I've had that comment quite a bit. And I understand that point of view. Yes, you can break the rules, but to break the rules, you need to understand the rules. And unless you know more than 100 different compositional tools and techniques, there's a very good chance when you break a rule, you're actually using a different rule. That makes sense. So instead of saying, I don't like to use rule of thirds, I like to center my subject instead. Well, that's centering. I don't like to have a frame within my photo. I like to use a natural framing of trees on either side. Well, that's another compositional technique. So that's what I'm getting at there. All right. So a ruthless crop is where you do an unexpected crop. Okay, so you might do a really tight crop and fill the frame, or you might do a crop where the person is right in the corner and then you've got all this negative space all around. When we crop a photo, you need to do what I call border patrol. So you need to go around the edges of the frame. Okay, let's see if I can get an example here. Here we go, here's an example. Okay, so I've got this, and I'm covering it. That's handy. The bit that I was going to say attracts my eye and pulls my attention was right in the bit that I'm covering with my own head. All right. This is an example of border patrol. So this is fun. It's there's the original. Check that out. That's the original. And this is the classic, and I'm digressing again. I do this. This is a classic example of where you've got something sticking out the back of him, and here you've got another duck's head poking out of his bum. So when I did the edit, I cropped that. I mean, I can use touch retouch, and I can do that, but the rule of thirds, and here the horizon's in the middle, so you're not sure whether the foreground or the sky is what's interesting. Here, there's no question. This is not about the sky. This is not about the duck's head poking out the other duck's bum. This is all about the foreground. Now, to bring back to border patrol, if I go around the edges, I can see up in the top left, I have a lovely bokeh happening there, but it's like a magnet for me, because once I've finished checking out all this cool detail here, I've left enough space there that now I can go back over there, have a look, oh yeah, cool, and then come back to the duck again. But because of that lovely bokeh that naturally occurred there with that lens attachment, it does kind of pull your attention a little bit, and that's what border patrol is. It has that visual tension where you go, oh gosh, I want to go see what's out there, and I want to know what's going on in that corner. And in essence, your intention is to try and foster a sense of mystery and intrigue with the photo as well. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.